The case of Abigail Hernandez. Abigail Hernandez, often called Abby, was born on October 12, 1998, in Manchester, New Hampshire, USA. She was the second child of her parents, Rubens Hernandez and Zegna. The family lived a happy life for many years, but eventually her parents chose to divorce. After the separation, Abigail and her older sister, Sarah, moved in with their mother, who worked as a nurse. From an early age, Abigail displayed many positive qualities. People who knew her described her as kind, curious, cheerful, and adventurous. She initially explored the world of robotics and soon afterward began learning German. However, Abigail's true passion was hiking. This was not surprising, as she lived in an ideal area for such activities. North Conway and its surrounding regions are known as one of the main destinations for hiking and rock climbing in the northeastern United States. The beautiful local scenery continues to attract many tourists who enjoy long walks and outdoor activities. Abigail's high school classmates remembered her as a unique person who could connect with almost anyone. This trait allowed her to make friends easily. In 2013, after a busy summer, Abigail returned to school and balanced her daily routine with extracurricular activities that brought her happiness. At that time, she was in a relationship with her boyfriend, Jimmy Campbell, and spent most of her free time with him. Overall, Abigail lived a typical life in a beautiful and safe area with a low crime rate, which made her and her loved ones feel secure when going out or returning home. However, everything changed suddenly when a man named Nathaniel entered her life. Nathaniel Kibbe, known as Nate, lived about 50 kilometers from Conway in Gorham, New Hampshire. He was born on July 15, 1980, and little is known about his family or early life. According to some sources, he attended the same school as Abigail but many years earlier, meaning they never crossed paths inside the school or outside it. During his school years, most of Nathaniel's classmates viewed him as extremely aggressive and cruel. Reports from peers suggested that he kept a list of names of future victims, mainly fellow students. In addition, Nathaniel often claimed to be part of a gang called the Vipers, and he was generally seen as someone not to be challenged. As Nathaniel grew older, he appeared to change on the surface. He obtained a job at a company specializing in mechanical processing and manufacturing. People who knew him at that time described him as disciplined, and his co-workers and supervisors viewed him as an exemplary employee. However, they were unaware of his dark past. Earlier, Nathaniel had attempted to abduct a 16-year-old girl who was trying to board a school bus. He also had multiple encounters with law enforcement related to possession of banned substances. Furthermore, he was involved in several firearm-related incidents and was frequently caught lying while attempting to purchase them from specialty shops. This represents only a small part of his troubling history. Some reports indicate that Nathaniel lived with a 13-year-old girl for several months, claiming she was his girlfriend and openly acknowledging the inappropriate nature of their relationship. In reality, such a relationship between an adult and a minor is a serious crime. Nathaniel's neighbors in the trailer park kept their distance from him. While they did not view him as an immediate threat, they did not trust him due to his questionable behavior. On October 9, 2013, Abigail left school and, as usual, went for a walk. Unfortunately, one of her birthday gifts, the hiking boots she wanted to wear for her 15th birthday, caused her discomfort. They rubbed against her feet, creating painful blisters that made walking difficult. Nevertheless, she felt she had no option but to continue on her way, trying to distract herself from the pain while enjoying the scenery and thinking about the upcoming holiday. Later, her boyfriend Jimmy texted her again to express his love, and Abigail responded with a heart emoji. Abigail's school was not far from home, but her usual walk became long and painful because her feet were chafed. She had to concentrate on every step, carefully placing her feet on the ground. As a result, she felt genuinely frightened when she heard a car approaching. The driver was Nathaniel, who appeared unusually warm and welcoming. He offered Abigail a ride, but she courteously refused because she didn't know him. Nevertheless, Nathaniel persisted after noticing that she was visibly uneasy. When she explained that her new shoes had given her blisters, he remarked that continuing to walk would only make her feet hurt more, which caused Abigail to hesitate. He then opened the passenger side door of his car, and Abigail unwillingly sat there. As Nathaniel drove off, he began asking her different questions. Initially, everything seemed normal to Abigail. However, He soon stated that he needed to stop at a hardware store to purchase a few things for his home. He then pulled into the parking lot of a large hardware store and parked in a secluded spot far from the entrance. By this time, Abigail was feeling extremely nervous, but she tried to remain calm and behave naturally. She even attempted to persuade Nathaniel that her house was close enough for her to walk. But upon hearing this, Nathaniel insisted even more strongly that he would take her home, as they had first agreed. At that point, tension filled the air as Abigail decided to unfasten her seatbelt and attempt to flee the car. However, Nathaniel reacted swiftly to her movement in an unexpected manner. He grabbed her shirt with one hand and pulled a weapon from the glove compartment with the other, pointing it straight at her. Within seconds, the situation escalated dramatically, and Abigail realized she was in serious danger. Nathaniel not only kept the weapon aimed at her, but also threatened to harm her. Feeling trapped, Abigail understood that she had to remain calm and cooperate with him. After a few minutes, Nathaniel placed a large baseball cap on Abigail's head and tied her hands with tourniquets. He then started the car and drove away. At some point, Nathaniel noticed that Abigail was repeatedly looking toward the road, positioning her head so that the baseball cap did not restrict her view. This angered him, and he used a stun weapon on her, causing her to lose consciousness. When Abigail regained awareness, she found herself in a dark, small room with no windows. The only thing visible was a poster on the wall showing a snake with the words, "Don't step on me." A few minutes later, Nathaniel blindfolded her with tape, bound her hands with plastic restraints, and placed a motorcycle helmet on her head. Once he made sure she was completely restrained and defenseless, he removed her clothes and forced her into intimacy for the first time. From that day forward, Nathaniel kept the girl captive, giving in to his darkest instincts and subjecting her to multiple forms of abuse. He also threatened to harm her family and friends if she tried to escape or tell anyone about what was happening. Normally, Abigail returned home after dinner. But when 7 p.m. arrived and she was still missing, her mother became extremely worried. She asked her eldest daughter, Sarah, whether Abigail had mentioned any plans to go out. Unfortunately, Sarah had no information to share. Zegna then attempted to call her daughter, but it appeared that Abigail's phone was switched off. Under these circumstances, Zegna felt forced to contact the police to report her daughter missing. Immediately, law enforcement officers activated the standard missing child search protocol. Meanwhile, Zegna and Sarah reached out to several of Abigail's friends in hopes that one of them might know where she was. However, none of these efforts produced the desired outcome. There was no one who could provide information that would help locate her, and Nathaniel was the only person who knew where she was. In addition, Nathaniel fully understood that any mobile phone could be tracked, so he almost immediately destroyed Abigail's phone. As a result, local authorities and her relatives were desperately searching for her. While she was under Nathaniel's control, whenever he spent time with the victim, he tried to play music at full volume so that no one would hear her screams. In fact, acts of physical violence by Nathaniel were quite frequent. He used various methods to intimidate Abigail in order to keep her under his dominance. For instance, the aggressor repeatedly told her that if she behaved properly, he would not hurt her too badly. At the same time, he declared that without hesitation, he would kill her and her family if the situation demanded it. As a result, Abigail could only pray. She kept repeating to herself again and again that she needed to stay calm and try to assess her situation. She concentrated on a single objective. She had to do everything within her power to stay alive. She thought that the best approach might be to grow closer to her captor. Tolerating his bullying, Abigail attempted to lower his defenses. Whenever possible, she spoke to him in a calm manner, claiming that she did not judge what he had done. She also stated that everyone makes mistakes and assured him that she would remain silent about the incident if he released her. However, all of her efforts to get closer to Nathaniel failed completely. It appeared that the man was becoming even more brutal than before. The room where Nathaniel kept Abigail was almost soundproof, resembling a modern cargo container. There were no windows, which made it impossible for her to connect with the outside world. To isolate her further, Nathaniel placed a sign on the front door that read, "Strangers, entry is prohibited." Although this seemed strange to his neighbors, they did not pay much attention, since Nathaniel had always been seen as peculiar, and it was his property. During his time with Abigail, he indulged his disturbing urges, subjecting her to different forms of physical and psychological manipulation. Despite her desperate circumstances, Abigail clung to the hope that she would eventually escape this nightmare. She stayed determined and focused on a plan to soften her captor. Slowly, she achieved some progress. At one stage, Nathaniel even permitted her to stay in his trailer, marking a change in their relationship. Meanwhile, in Conway, posters about Abigail's disappearance were displayed everywhere. Although the local authorities searched, they found no concrete leads to help locate her. The search for Abigail turned out to be extremely difficult. Her disappearance caused widespread public concern, and many people were closely following the developments of the case. Abigail's relatives were unsure about what to do next. Even though they remained determined to find her, their hope was gradually fading. Nathaniel and Abigail were also closely following the news about the case, as it was frequently shown on television, which kept her hope for rescue alive. However, Nathaniel started to feel increasingly uneasy as time went on. Posters showing Abigail's image continued to multiply in the media, which regularly displayed her information, including a description of her appearance and phone numbers to call with any details related to the case. The search for Abigail had become one of the largest in New Hampshire's history. Meanwhile, she continued to suffer through her worst nightmare. As the search intensified, authorities still could not find anything useful to guide their efforts in the right direction. They had already questioned Jimmy, believing he might have information about her disappearance. However, Jimmy cooperated with the police and confirmed his alibi. A month had gone by since Abigail disappeared. Her mother was starting to lose hope. She had not checked her mailbox for weeks, but when Zegna went through the piled-up letters, she found one from her daughter. Dated October 22, 2013, the letter roughly read, "Dear Mom, I miss you and love you more than you can imagine. I'm sorry for everything that has happened. I've seen the news reports. To answer your questions, I want you to know that I am alive, healthy, and safe. Even though I miss you deeply, I can't share my location right now. Please stay strong for me, as I am staying strong for you. I've realized that patience, hope, and courage can make a difference. Don't lose hope. Keep moving forward and remember me. I believe everything will work out for us. I love you. Please give Sarah a hug for me and tell her that I love and miss her very much. Dreams come true." The authorities examined the letter, attempting to uncover at least some clue that might lead them to Abigail. Unfortunately, they found nothing of value. They were only able to verify that the letter had truly been written by Abigail. At the very least, they were completely certain that it was her handwriting. However, none of them suspected that the letter had been Nathaniel's idea. He believed that it might stop the search or slow the investigation. In reality, this was not the first letter Abigail had written. She had earlier composed another letter and managed to form a secret message by pressing her nails into the paper. This hidden message contained words asking for help, but they were not easily noticeable. Nathaniel somehow discovered Abigail's attempt to communicate and punished her harshly for it. Then he forced her to write the very letter that Zegna eventually received. For a long time, the contents of the letter were kept confidential, but many news outlets began spreading rumors that Abigail had voluntarily run away from home because she might be pregnant. As a result, nearly everyone in the city, including Abigail's classmates, discussed the supposed escape. Abigail's best friend later expressed her anger at this theory. She was certain that her friend was not pregnant and felt that Abigail was not the kind of person to avoid difficult situations. Both Abigail's family and the investigators were convinced that she was in grave danger. 6 weeks after her daughter's disappearance, Zegna spoke to journalists, hoping to inspire her daughter with optimism. She firmly believed that Abigail was alive and thought she might see her on television. "I know that hope is stronger than fear. I hope one day you can reach out to me. I feel your presence in my life every day, and I wish for your safe return home as soon as possible." Unfortunately, days turned into weeks and weeks into a month, with law enforcement still no closer to solving the case. However, they did collect enough evidence to conclude that Abigail was being held against her will. Meanwhile, the relationship between Abigail and Nathaniel was becoming stronger. Although it took some time, Abigail succeeded in gaining Nathaniel's trust. He even involved her in one of his illegal activities, working on counterfeit banknotes. Despite this, Abigail continued to be subjected to physical abuse and verbal insults. Months went by, and the investigation produced no meaningful leads. Zegna and Sarah continued to experience sadness and despair. At Nathaniel's house, life went on as usual. Despite being held captive for a long period, Abigail never learned the true identity of her captor. She referred to him by a simple term, the owner. Nathaniel often startled her with his unpredictable behavior and emotional changes. Recently, their interactions had included more calm moments, leading Abigail to think that he might not be as cruel as he had once seemed. However, this belief changed abruptly when Nathaniel placed a makeshift collar around Abigail's neck and activated it, sending a powerful electric shock through her weakened body. When she regained consciousness, Nathaniel warned her that he would act if she tried to escape. By mid-January 2014, Abigail had been held captive for more than 6 months. Perhaps her relationship with Nathaniel remained unchanged from before. Undeniably, there was a certain connection between them. However, she was still at a disadvantage, and Nathaniel attempted to remain calm. At this point, some progress was made. For example, Nathaniel permitted Abigail to read and even provided her with several books, which may have been his first mistake. One of the cookbooks in Nathaniel's house had his name written on it, and Abigail noticed this detail. When she addressed him by his name, Nathaniel was genuinely startled and asked how she knew it. Abigail honestly responded that she had seen his name on the book's cover. Being truthful was part of her plan to build a bond with her kidnapper. She hoped that one day Nathaniel would choose to release her, or that someone would eventually find her. Abigail had been locked inside a soundproof box for a very long time, and now she was closer to freedom than ever. Strangely enough, her possible rescue did not come from her own actions, but instead because Nathaniel had been involved in a minor traffic accident. Realizing that it was only a matter of time before authorities arrived at his door, he decided to call the nearest police station and offered to cooperate. As a result, law enforcement officers came to his home and discovered a large collection of firearms of different calibers. In this situation, Nathaniel willingly handed over the weapons to the authorities. He allowed the police to search his trailer multiple times. Again and again, officers went in and out, passing only a few meters away from the container where Abigail was being held, but due to his cooperative behavior, she remained in captivity. Despite Abigail having been missing for a long time, her family and the authorities continued searching for her, hoping that she was still alive. Nathaniel appeared unconcerned by the situation. He would leave his house during the day and return in the evening without worrying that Abigail might try to escape. However, some of Nathaniel's actions eventually changed the course of events. He met a woman, and they eventually became intimate. During their conversation, she revealed that she was facing financial difficulties and could not afford her rent. Nathaniel decided to help her by giving her some money. Later, while shopping at a supermarket, she was genuinely shocked when the cashier informed her that her $50 bills were counterfeit. She was forced to leave her items at the checkout and quickly exit the store. After returning home, she called Nathaniel and vented her frustration at him. She also advised him to get rid of all the counterfeit money he had at home, since the police were expected to visit him soon. Of course, she had no idea that her call would have serious consequences for Abigail. Once their conversation ended, Nathaniel panicked and decided that he needed to eliminate anything that could lead to his arrest. More than the possible counterfeiting charges, he was mainly worried about accusations related to Abigail's kidnapping and the repeated crimes against her personal safety. So on July 20th, 2014, afraid that he would be caught, Nathaniel returned almost all of Abigail's belongings. He then placed her in the passenger seat of his car and put the same baseball cap on her that she had worn on the day she was kidnapped. After that, Nathaniel started the car, and they drove together for several hours. Eventually, he stopped and ordered Abigail to get out. He threatened her one last time, saying that he would return and cause pain and suffering to her loved ones if she told anyone what had happened to her or reported him to the police. This was how Abigail gained her freedom. Later, Abigail reflected that she could not tell whether what she experienced was a dream or reality. However, once she regained her awareness, she began walking toward a house. Along the road, for a long time, she could not believe that she was free. After enduring 9 months of confinement and trauma, she was finally able to return home. As she walked toward her house, she heard the familiar voice of her mother, who was speaking to someone on the phone. When Abigail stepped inside and shouted, "Mom," Zegna was overwhelmed with disbelief at hearing her daughter's voice again after so many months. She even asked for confirmation, trying to make sure it was truly her. Later that evening, Zegna urged Abigail to share everything that had happened to her. Threats from Nathaniel quickly resurfaced in her mind. She consistently avoided giving details about the identity of her kidnapper. After talking things through, Zegna and Abigail decided to contact the police. However, during the police interview, Abigail once again withheld information about her captor, fearing that he might return and harm her family. After the police questioned Abigail, news of her release from captivity slowly spread throughout the area. When Abigail returned home from the police station, she took a bath and then lay down in her own bed. It still felt like a dream, but the terrifying memories pulled her back into reality. In that moment, she felt drained, and for the first time in a long period, Abigail was able to genuinely rest, feeling secure. The following day felt just as unusual for her. On one hand, she wanted to go back to her ordinary life and take part in her favorite activities. On the other hand, she was still overwhelmed by fear and anxiety at the thought of Nathaniel possibly returning to her life. The days that followed passed in much the same way, and Abigail sensed that her feeling of freedom was still incomplete. Perhaps this is why, on July 27, 2014, she could no longer bear it and admitted to her mother that she had intentionally concealed all the information about the man who had abducted her. She suggested that they speak with the police again, which they did. The officers welcomed Abigail's new testimony, which turned out to be critical for the investigation. After Abigail shared everything she knew about Nathaniel, the authorities began preparing an operation to capture him as quickly as possible. The next day, police officers arrived at Nathaniel's home, surrounded his trailer, and ordered him to surrender. Surprisingly, Nathaniel did not resist arrest. After being taken into custody, he was brought to the police station for questioning. Meanwhile, a thorough search of his residence was carried out, and the officers left no corner unchecked, collecting all evidence that had even the slightest connection to the investigation. During the interrogation, Nathaniel asked for a lawyer and denied any involvement in the accusations against him. The preliminary hearing in this case took place the very next day after his arrest, and in the days that followed, Nathaniel appeared in court several times to review the evidence presented by the prosecution. By that point, there was no doubt that he was responsible for the horrific events in Abigail's life. On August 12, 2014, Nathaniel's lawyers filed a motion for his release in court, and unexpectedly, the judge in Kona approved it. However, Nathaniel was forbidden from contacting the victim, Abigail, or her family, and he was required to stay at least 100 meters away from them. The main trial began in mid-December 2014, with Abigail and her family seated in the front row at the prosecutor's table, carefully observing the defense's arguments. At that time, Nathaniel was being held at the Carroll County Correctional Facility and faced more than 180 charges connected to Abigail's case. The next court hearing took place on May 26, 2016, nearly 2 years after Nathaniel's arrest. By then, he had accepted a plea deal and was ready to admit his guilt, which was intended to avoid a lengthy trial and offered him certain legal advantages. A particularly emotional moment occurred when Abigail delivered her final statement. She shared that she had resumed her education, social life, and sports activities. She then looked at Nathaniel and told him that even though he had been a real monster to her, he would always be a man who simply made the wrong choice. It appeared that Abigail wanted Nathaniel to understand that she had forgiven him. Continuing her statement, Abigail expressed deep regret that things had not turned out differently, but she acknowledged that her family's safety was the most important thing. After all, it was not she who had sent Nathaniel to prison. Abigail believed that he had placed himself in that position when he chose to keep her captive. All of it had been his own decision. She ended her statement by thanking Nathaniel, who had helped her through this ordeal, explaining that the experience had made her value her life and freedom much more. Then she turned toward Nathaniel and her mother. Zegna told Nathaniel that despite the fact that a part of her soul truly hated him, she also wanted to thank him for not taking her daughter's life. After Abigail's words, Nathaniel Kibbe pleaded guilty to 7 felony charges, including kidnapping and abuse. He will serve between 45 and 90 years in prison. Meanwhile, Abigail was able to return to a normal life sometime after Nathaniel's trial. A few years later, she moved to a new county, started a family, and had a child. In an interview, she shared that during the 9 months she was held captive, she was determined to survive. She also stated that forgiveness played a vital role in helping her return to a normal life, and she considered it the best form of revenge against her kidnapper. Moving on to the next case. Case of Christina Carlincraft. Christina Rose Carlincraft was born on November 11, 1983, in a coastal town in southern New Jersey to Stuart Kraft and Dean Carlin. She possessed a natural talent for being in front of the camera, which would ultimately shape her career path. After graduating from high school in Linwood in 2000, Christina worked as a waitress in southern New Jersey and later at the Borgata Hotel, Casino, and Spa in Atlantic City for several years. However, her ultimate ambition was to become a model, and her determination paid off. She eventually found success in the modeling industry. In her promotional material, Christina revealed that she enjoyed participating in photo shoots featuring high-end lingerie and swimwear. According to Eva Walls, a friend she met on a 3-day Maxim magazine shoot, Christina was a charming and beautiful woman with a great sense of humor. With dark hair and blue eyes, she embodied the essence of a fashion model. Christina had always dreamed of appearing on the cover of Playboy. In 2003, while working as a waitress at the Borgata Casino, she met Alex Yadielli. They began dating soon after, and Alex became a supportive partner, never opposing her career choices. After a long-term relationship, they became engaged. The couple remained together until Christina's death. Christina achieved her goal of becoming Cyber Girl of the Month for May 2009 and was invited to the Playboy Mansion. She attended parties at the mansion, gaining entry into the glamorous world. This success marked the peak of her career, and her ambitions soared, especially after meeting Hugh Hefner, whose attention was notoriously difficult to capture. However, despite this, Christina did not become a Playboy magazine model. Thousands of girls submit their photos to the magazine, but only one is selected. At 26, Christina was considered too old for the magazine, which typically features younger models. This setback affected her confidence, but she continued modeling. Her extensive portfolio included work with Redken, Moxham, Victoria's Secret, Vanity Fair, and many others. To further her career, Christina moved to New York with her boyfriend Alex. However, not all brands were willing to work with her due to her explicit photo shoots. Christina's career began to decline after her Playboy appearance, ultimately coming to an end. Overcoming this challenging period in her life was undoubtedly difficult, but she always had Alex's support. Known for her elegant appearance, captivating beauty, and scandalous behavior, Christina made headlines in 2016 for causing a scene at the Smith, a restaurant in New York. According to law enforcement sources and court documents, Christina Carlincraft, 34, and her male companion got into an argument with the manager, Sergei Onikin, on March 6 over their bill. The man refused to pay, and the manager intervened. Witnesses claimed Christina was intoxicated and falsely accused the manager of pushing her, but surveillance footage proved otherwise. She allegedly struck someone in the neck around 10 p.m., causing redness and significant pain. Christina was charged with misdemeanor assault, attempted assault, and harassment. However, the district attorney offered her a deal, and the charges were dropped on the condition that she remained trouble-free for 6 months. Christina had always been fond of Philadelphia, particularly Ardmore, which she considered a safe haven. With this in mind, Alex purchased an apartment in Ardmore in 2018, and they relocated to Pennsylvania together. However, Christina soon discovered that Ardmore was not as safe as she had believed. On August 18, 2018, she contacted the police to report a robbery. Earlier that evening, Christina had spent time at a bar in Philadelphia, but her memories of the night were hazy. The next thing she recalled was waking up the following morning feeling groggy and suspecting that someone had drugged her with illegal substances. She had no recollection of how she got home or whether anyone had accompanied her. At the time, Alex was away on a business trip. Feeling uneasy and anxious, Christina repeatedly expressed concerns about her safety. During the investigation, police obtained CCTV footage showing a car arriving at Christina's apartment around 3 a.m. Unconscious in the back seat, Christina was being driven by a thief who had stolen her keys, entered her home, and plundered over $50,000 worth of valuables, including jewelry, designer bags, pillows, sunglasses, a credit card, and personal documents. The thief remained in the apartment for about an hour and a half before returning to the car, helped Christina inside, and then left her in the hallway. The keys were placed back in her purse, and the perpetrator drove away. Police quickly identified the suspect using a credit card statement. The driver was Andre Melton, a man with a prior criminal record. He was operating a rented 2018 Kia Sorento with Virginia license plates. Witnesses reported seeing the same car near Christina's house on August 17th, which police confirmed using specialized license plate recognition software. While authorities were still searching for Andre Melton to recover Christina's stolen items, a far more serious crime occurred. Just 4 days later, on August 22, 2018, Alex Shelley called the police to request a welfare check on his girlfriend, Christina Carlincraft, as he was unable to reach her and was on his way home. Christina was not answering her calls or texts. Upon arriving, Alex found the apartment door locked from the inside. He checked the security system, which revealed that someone had opened the front door and the balcony door during the night. Police were called to the address and forced entry by breaking down the front door, which had been locked from the inside. Upon entering the apartment, they were immediately confronted with signs of a crime scene, including visible blood. A body lay on the bed, covered with a blanket. When the blanket was lifted, they found a woman who had been severely beaten. Tragically, it was Christina Carlincraft, already deceased. Her body bore evidence of multiple blows, a broken nose, and a strangulation mark around her neck. It was later determined that Christina had been strangled with her own sweatpants. When detectives identified the victim, they had to deliver the devastating news to Alex, who was waiting outside. His beloved Christina was dead. This shocking revelation immediately sparked suspicion, as the people closest to the victim are often considered in such cases. Police did not dismiss the possibility that Alex might have been involved. Alex and Christina had a long history together, and any number of events could have transpired between them. He was the one who contacted the police, expressing concern for Christina's safety, only for her to be found dead shortly afterward. The circumstances appeared highly coincidental, raising the possibility that Alex could have staged the scenario to deflect suspicion from himself. Investigators requested that Alex accompany them to the police station to answer questions. He agreed without hesitation. During questioning, Alex explained that he had an urgent work commitment in New York on August 21st and had planned to return. In the early hours of August 22nd, at 2:30 a.m., he called Christina to wish her good night, but she did not answer. Knowing that she was often awake at this hour, Alex grew anxious. He made several more calls, yet Christina remained unresponsive. Upon reviewing the security system, he noticed suspicious activity in the apartment that night, prompting him to abandon his business plans and rush back to Ardmore. After hearing Alex's account, the police no longer believed he was responsible for Christina's murder. His alibi checked out, and it was impossible for him to be in two places at once. They cleared him as a suspect, but the pressing questions remained. Who killed Christina, and who would want her dead? Investigators looked into Christina's robbery report from 4 days prior, suspecting a connection between the two crimes. This led them to Andre Melton, the thief who had stolen from Christina's apartment. Perhaps he had returned to steal again, but his plan was thwarted when Christina caught him. It was also possible that, upon learning she had reported him to the police, he sought revenge. On August 22nd, the day Christina's body was discovered, police obtained an arrest warrant for Andre Melton. When they went to his address, however, he was no longer there. Despite his absence, some of Christina's belongings were still found at the location. Police also obtained surveillance footage from the night of the crime, which showed Christina leaving her apartment and returning a few hours later with an unknown man. The footage, recorded at 3:08 a.m., revealed that the man was not Andre Melton. Further analysis confirmed that the unknown man did not leave Christina's apartment again. Police later found an explanation using CCTV cameras on the streets of Ardmore. They discovered that Christina had visited a Philadelphia bar before returning to her apartment. Investigators reviewed the bar's CCTV footage, which showed Christina meeting a man who later hugged her. This was the same man she had returned to her apartment with. After leaving the bar, Christina and her new companion were involved in an altercation. In the days that followed, detectives worked to reconstruct Christina's movements on the day of her death, gathering data to piece together the events leading up to the crime. Police quickly ruled out Melton as a suspect, as he had not been with Christina on the day she died. However, it remained unclear whether her death was linked to the earlier robbery or simply coincidental. On August 25th, police received a new lead. Andrew Sanford, The taxi driver who had transported Christina and her companion that night came forward. According to Sanford, Christina and the man had hailed him down rather than using a taxi app and had negotiated the fare. Sanford reported that the couple appeared affectionate and did not arouse suspicion. Upon arriving at their destination, Christina exited and directed Sanford where to go. She did not have any cash and offered her credit card, but Sanford declined. Her companion then offered him $100 to wait 10 to 15 minutes while they went inside. Sanford left 20 minutes later when neither Christina nor her companion had returned. Christina and her companion, Alex, entered their second-floor apartment around 3 a.m. About an hour later, at 4 a.m., Christina made a call to her cousin, but she did not speak. Instead, her cousin heard a man's voice in the background warning Christina not to call the police. The call abruptly ended before the cousin could gather more information. It remains unclear why the cousin did not call 911 after hearing this. Police were able to piece together the timeline of the crime thanks to door sensors in the apartment, which recorded the exact times each door was opened. The records showed that a door had been opened at 3:08 a.m. and again at 5:10 a.m. Around the same time, the system detected that the sliding glass door on the balcony had been opened, explaining why the surveillance cameras did not capture the moment when the man Christina met at the bar left. When police arrived after Alex's call, they found Christina alone in the apartment, leading them to assume that the perpetrator had jumped off the balcony. Police sought the public's assistance through the media, releasing surveillance images of two men, Andre Melton and the man present at Christina's apartment the night she died. In a surprising turn, Andre Melton, whose whereabouts were still unknown to investigators, contacted the police himself. He admitted to stealing valuables from Christina, but adamantly denied any involvement in her murder. Police were perplexed by this unexpected call, as they were still unable to establish a definitive connection between the theft and Christina's death. It was possible that this was part of a strategy devised by the two suspects. Melton appeared not to be surrendering to authorities, but rather declaring his innocence in Christina's murder. On August 26th, the police station received an anonymous call from a man claiming to know one of the suspects featured in the released photos. He stated that he had shared a room with the suspect at a psychiatric clinic in Philadelphia. The caller revealed that the suspect had previously chased a woman in Love Park, Philadelphia, followed her into the local family court building, where he molested her and became aggressive, shouting and causing destruction. The incident led to a 2-hour stay in a psychiatric hospital costing $70. However, the suspect was admitted anonymously, as no one wanted to deal with him. Police were left with a mystery. The caller provided further critical information, stating that the suspect bragged about recently strangling a woman and had taken great pleasure and satisfaction from the act. Upon hearing this, investigators strongly believed they had identified Christina Carlincraft's killer. The police station then received another call from a man claiming to be a relative of the suspect from Philadelphia. He identified the man in the photo as Jonathan Wesley Harris, who had previously served a prison sentence for robbery. Harris had been released from prison on July 15th, just 5 weeks before Christina's death. After conducting a thorough background check, investigators concluded that Andre Melton and Jonathan Harris had no connection and had never crossed paths. Police therefore ruled out any link between the two crimes. Furthermore, they accessed Harris's phone records, which revealed he had sent several messages on August 22nd. One of the texts mentioned that he had met an attractive woman and planned to visit her apartment on August 28th. With this new evidence, police obtained an arrest warrant for Jonathan Harris and deemed it crucial to apprehend him as soon as possible, uncertain of his next move. Tracking Harris proved challenging, as he had left no trace. Investigators finally got a break when they contacted Harris's sister on August 29, 2018, and learned he had recently purchased a bus ticket to Pittsburgh. Unfortunately, Harris was already on the bus when they spoke with his sister. Police realized they would not be able to catch him themselves, leaving the Pittsburgh police as their last hope. Being in the right place at the right time was essential to apprehend Harris. Investigators working on Christina's case reached out to the Pittsburgh Law Enforcement Agency for assistance. They provided the exact arrival time of the bus in Pittsburgh and sent over a photo of Harris. The fugitive task force then set up an ambush, blocking all potential escape routes and preparing to apprehend the suspect at a moment's notice. Shortly afterward, one of the officers spotted the bus approaching. They allowed Harris time to calmly disembark, avoiding sudden moves that might provoke a reaction. About 10 minutes later, a policeman intercepted him. Harris's eyes were scanning, searching for an escape route, but it was too late. According to a Pittsburgh police officer, when asked to identify himself, Harris provided a false name. He was subsequently arrested and taken into custody at the police station. Detectives from Philadelphia traveled to Pittsburgh to question Harris, requesting that he recount the events of the night he met Christina. Harris claimed to have seen her on multiple occasions at bars and nightclubs in Philadelphia. Christina Carlincraft was struggling to adjust to her new life in New York, which had drastically changed her daily routine and environment. As a result, she frequently visited bars, cafes, and nightclubs, but was always alone since Alex was constantly working and she had not yet formed new friendships. It was common for men at these establishments to approach her, taking advantage of her solo status. Harris was one of those men. He claimed he was drunk and high on illegal drugs when he met Christina. They had a drink, then went to her place, where they drank more and had consensual sex. Harris demanded $1,200, but Christina refused, sparking a heated argument. He claimed she hit him with a wine bottle, so he hit her back, causing her to fall. When she tried to call the police, he strangled her with sweatpants until she passed out. Jonathan Harris's story contained inconsistencies. A toxicology report on Christina's body found only alcohol, contradicting his claim of a single hit. When confronted, he admitted to lying. Initially, Harris denied involvement, but later confessed to beating her, saying, "I panicked," and covered her body because he did not want to see her. When the trial began, Harris, despite having confessed to the crime, pleaded not guilty, like many other criminals who later retract their confessions. Investigators had, however, assembled a substantial amount of evidence, making it difficult for Harris and his lawyer to build a strong defense. They anticipated a sentence of 22 to 40 years for third-degree murder and attempted to avoid a life sentence. Nevertheless, prosecutors presented overwhelming evidence that convinced the court the crime was premeditated. During the trial, the court heard testimony from a man who had shared a room with Harris at a psychiatric clinic. This same man had previously contacted the police. He revealed that Jonathan Harris had earlier confessed to him, stating, "There's nothing like squeezing somebody and feeling the last breath leave their body." In August 2019, Judge William R. Carpenter sentenced Jonathan Wesley Harris to life in prison without parole, plus an additional 22 to 45 years. The judge added the extra decades to ensure Harris would never be freed, sending a message to future governors or pardon boards. In December 2018, Philadelphia police arrested Andre Melton for the robbery of Christina Carlincraft's apartment. In March 2020, he was sentenced to 1 to 4 years in prison, followed by 3 years of consecutive probation, meaning Melton will be under court supervision for a total of 7 years. Before learning his fate, Melton said, "I would like to apologize to the family for any grief or pain that I caused. I am not the bad person the district attorney is trying to make me out to be." Moving on to the next case. The case of Debrina Kowam. Debrina Kowam, a woman formerly known for her radiant smile and lively personality, experienced a turbulent life before meeting a tragic end on December 22, 2024. Born into a rural family in Toms River, New Jersey, she once lived a successful life. However, the challenges and hardships of life gradually pushed her into circumstances where she had to rely on the homeless shelter system in New York City. Her tragic death, resulting from a violent act on the subway, not only shocked and horrified the public, but also sparked concerns about security and immigration issues in the United States. Debrina Kowam was a beautiful young woman, always smiling, full of energy, and possessing an outgoing personality. She frequently enjoyed life with her friends at lively destinations such as Las Vegas or the Caribbean. Before residing in homeless shelters in New York City, she had lived in Toms River, New Jersey. Her father worked on the assembly line at the General Motors plant in Linden, while her mother was employed in a bakery. Debrina had an older brother and an older sister. She studied business and marketing at Montclair State University and worked at Merck. Nevertheless, her life faced many challenges. In 2008, she filed for bankruptcy. Although she had no criminal record in New York City, she was arrested 9 times in Atlantic City between 2017 and 2023, mainly for drinking alcohol in public and sleeping on the streets. After her final arrest, she moved to New York City and received a summons in April 2024, although the purpose of the summons was not disclosed. Debrina's life was marked by numerous hardships, culminating in a horrific and tragic event on December 22, 2024. On that morning, around 7:30 a.m., as the F train stopped at the Coney Island Stillwell Avenue station, a man approached her while she was sleeping in a subway car and set her on fire with a lighter. The flames erupted violently within seconds. Despite attempts by Metropolitan Transportation Authority staff to extinguish the fire using a fire extinguisher, she was pronounced dead at the scene at 7:48 a.m. After carrying out the attack, the perpetrator left the subway car but remained seated on a bench near the scene. A witness-recorded video showed a man sitting on a nearby bench watching the fire before standing up. This video played a key role in assisting the police to identify the suspect. Hours after the attack, authorities released surveillance footage and images. 3 high school students recognized the suspect and contacted the police. Sebastian Zepeda Khalil, a 33-year-old Guatemalan national who had entered the United States illegally, was identified as the primary suspect. He was arrested later that day on a subway in Midtown Manhattan and was found in possession of a lighter at the time of his arrest. It was revealed that Sebastian had been deported in 2018 but had re-entered the United States illegally. During his initial interview at the 6th Precinct Station in Coney Island, Sebastian repeatedly claimed he could not remember anything about the incident because he had been drinking heavily the previous night. However, when investigators showed him the surveillance video capturing him starting the fire, he admitted that the person in the video was indeed him. He confessed to his actions and expressed remorse for what had happened to Debrina. He stated that he had no intention of causing harm and did not comprehend what had occurred, but he felt deep regret for his actions. Sebastian explained that after finishing his work as a roofer in Queens, he immediately went to a bar to consume alcohol. He admitted to detectives that he often drank to the point of unconsciousness. On that morning, he boarded the F train around 5 or 6 a.m., although he could not recall where he had started. The only thing he remembered afterward was being near the 18th Avenue station on the F line in the Kensington area of Brooklyn around 8 or 9 a.m., where he drank more beer before returning to Queens. He had no memory of how he got onto the F train and only realized he was on the train when he regained consciousness. Debrina Kowam, a woman originally from New Jersey, remained unidentified for more than a week after her murder due to the severe burns on her body. At the time of her death, she appeared to be experiencing homelessness and had spent a brief period in the city's homeless shelter system. It was not until December 31, 2024, 9 days after the attack, that police identified the victim as 57-year-old Debrina Kowam. The autopsy revealed that she had died from thermal burns and smoke inhalation. Prosecutors have accused Sebastian Zepeda Khalil of calmly approaching Debrina while she was sleeping on the F train heading to the Coney Island Stillwell Avenue subway station in Brooklyn early on the morning of December 22nd. They allege that he set her on fire, fanned the flames, and watched as she suffered and died in agony. This horrific act has led to Sebastian being charged with first-degree and second-degree murder, along with additional charges of arson. On December 24, 2024, Sebastian Zepeda Khalil appeared in court and pleaded not guilty to the charges of first-degree murder, second-degree murder, and first-degree arson. If convicted, he could face life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Currently, Sebastian is being held on Rikers Island and is scheduled to appear in court again on March 12, 2025. According to clergy members present at Sebastian's trial, family and friends are expected to gather on January 12, 2025, at the First Baptist Church of Sheepshead Bay in Brooklyn for a memorial service in Debrina's honor. Mark Montaigne, a New Jersey native who attended high school with Debrina, shared that he is still trying to come to terms with the fact that someone he once knew and cared for in his youth has now become the subject of attention due to such a tragedy. He recounted that she had been a classmate who helped him with chemistry, in which she excelled, and described her as a truly intelligent person. Mark expressed shock at what had happened on the subway, emphasizing how profoundly sad the situation is. After graduating, although Mark maintained contact with a close circle of friends from Passaic High School, he lost touch with Debrina. He expressed regret for not knowing about the harsh difficulties she faced in the years leading up to her death. He blamed Debrina's death on flaws in the United States immigration system, as the perpetrator, Sebastian Zapata Khalil, was a migrant from Guatemala. He pointed to this tragedy as a clear example of the need for stricter immigration controls in the United States. The case quickly drew nationwide attention, becoming a topic of debate surrounding the issue of increasing crimes linked to illegal immigrants in the United States. The incident sparked a debate over immigration policy, with many calling for increased border control and a review of the current immigration system to ensure the safety of citizens. Furthermore, this brutal attack has left New Yorkers deeply concerned about subway safety and the overall safety of the city, particularly in light of a string of high-profile violent incidents in recent years. Brooklyn District Attorney Eric Gonzalez acknowledged the difficulty of understanding the motive behind Sebastian's savage crime. He emphasized that his office had expedited the indictment and is committed to seeking the harshest penalty for such inhumane and barbaric actions. Gonzalez also stated that both Debrina and her family deserve justice and that New Yorkers need to feel safe while riding the subway. Moving on to the next case. The Dino Guglielmelli case. A successful man whose career began with a business background suddenly plunged into the abyss of crime when he plotted to harm the wife he once loved. The Dino Guglielmelli case is not only a story of family conflict, but also exposes the dark side of relationships marked by power and manipulation. When love turns to hate, the extent of despair a person can endure is astonishing. This case reveals a dark aspect of the human soul that no one anticipated. Millionaire Dino Guglielmelli and model Monica Olson were an attractive and extravagant couple, seemingly well-matched in personality. Their marriage lasted 9 years, but as their feelings for each other diminished, they decided to divorce. Monica Olson was born in 1981 in a small town in Canada. She came from a respectable and educated family and had aspirations of becoming a model from a young age. As a teenager, she frequently attended auditions, appeared in advertisements, and participated in fashion shows. Monica was not only photogenic, but also intelligent, holding a master's degree in international finance and speaking 7 languages. She worked diligently to succeed in the modeling industry, first moving to New York and eventually to Los Angeles to pursue acting. In her early 20s, Monica had a small role in the film Chick Where to Meet Moms. During the summer of 2003 in Los Angeles, 42-year-old millionaire Dino Guglielmelli met 20-year-old Monica. Dino was captivated by Monica's beauty and sought a serious relationship with her. Dino was born in 1961 in Washington State and grew up in a large, close-knit family with 6 siblings. He began working at a young age, helping his parents on their farm. He had a passion for music and dreamed of starting his own rock band. Eventually, he dropped out of college and moved to Los Angeles to pursue his dream of becoming a rock star. However, his music career did not generate much money. At 20, Dino took a job as a cleaner at a waste disposal plant. Over the next 10 years, he worked his way up from cleaner to office manager and then to manager. In his spare time, Dino studied business and aimed to start his own venture. At 30, he launched a company that produced food additives and organic cosmetics. He believed that everyone wants to look young and healthy for as long as possible. His confidence in his business idea paid off. It became quite successful. At its peak, Dino's company operated 4 factories, employed around 300 people, and generated approximately $48 million in annual revenue. He enjoyed a life of luxury, owning expensive real estate and cars. Dino was previously married and had a son and a daughter, but his first marriage ended in divorce. At 42, the millionaire met Monica and fell in love with her immediately. He courted her, spoiled her, and showered her with gifts. After 6 months of dating, they went to Italy, where he proposed unexpectedly. Despite their age difference, Monica agreed to marry him. In 2004, they had a luxurious wedding in New York, and both radiated happiness. However, Dino's relatives were suspicious and thought Monica was only after his money. After the wedding, Dino and Monica moved into a beautiful mansion in Valencia, California. Their home was 650 square meters and featured 6 bedrooms, a large kitchen, a living room, and a spacious area for children. The property covered over 1 hectare, complete with a swimming pool filled with seawater, a small spa, and a guest house. Initially, married life was very happy for them. They lived with Dino's older children while he focused on his business, and Monica worked as a model. In 2005, when Monica became pregnant, she paused her modeling career. They soon welcomed their daughter, Vandala, and 2 years later, their second daughter, Sienna, was born. Monica was completely immersed in motherhood, but as the years passed, she realized that family was not all she wanted to devote her life to. In 2008, with her husband's support, she launched her own line of organic cosmetics called Skin by Monica Olson. She also began gradually returning to her modeling and acting career, hiring a nanny to help care for her children in their luxurious home. By 2011, Monica's career had taken off. She frequently traveled to Hollywood for filming, flew to New York, and worked with top designers in Milan. Often she returned home late at night when her daughters were already asleep and left early in the morning for filming again. During this period, Monica's cosmetics line became very popular, and 2 major retail chains agreed to feature her products in their stores. Monica's friend admitted that she wanted to become more financially independent and not rely on her millionaire husband, Dino. However, Dino noticed Monica's rising fame and became frustrated with her frequent absences. He preferred that she stay home, raise their children, and manage the household. Dino's older brother, Dino Guglielmelli, lived with Dino and Monica for 6 months and noticed issues in their relationship. Both Dino and Monica had strong personalities and were unwilling to compromise. Dino did not want Monica to participate in photo shoots and began to control her, which made him increasingly domineering and aggressive. Eventually, Monica, who owned the company, decided to shut it down, leading to a halt in the supply of their organic cosmetics to stores. Dino also quit his job and increasingly spent time in clubs. By the time he turned 50, he fulfilled a childhood dream by forming his own rock band as the lead vocalist. He dyed his hair black and started wearing nail polish. He told Monica that this was his way of expressing himself and that she should not be afraid, but his new appearance frightened her. Monica confided in her friends that his behavior had become erratic. One day, Dino fired the nanny, who was very much loved by his daughters. He was uncomfortable with how close the nanny was to Monica and felt she was too devoted to her. By the end of 2011, his relationship with Monica had deteriorated. The couple was constantly arguing and could no longer live together. Dino filed for divorce and moved into a guest house on his luxurious property to reduce contact with Monica while still being legally married. During this period, he began dating various women, not waiting for the official divorce. He had several mistresses and was open about his infidelities. Meanwhile, Dino also confided in his friend Rick Furman, a 40-year-old businessman and former military man with connections. Dino expressed his desire to end things with Monica as soon as possible. He and Rick, who were business partners supplying the military with vitamins and nutritional supplements, had developed a trusting friendship. Dino expressed his concerns to Rick about Monica having affairs with both men and women. He criticized her parenting, mentioning her heavy drinking and addictive use. He confided in Rick that he feared losing his assets and custody of his daughters. He was also unwilling to pay Monica the $5,000 monthly child support. He handed Rick a copy of Monica's car keys, along with details of her whereabouts. Dino requested Rick to plant additives in Monica's car and notify the police, intending for her to be arrested and deported to Canada. Not long after, Dino submitted paperwork showing his company was financially struggling, which led to a reduction in alimony from $5,000 to $2,500. He consulted a divorce lawyer, who recommended that Dino leave Monica alone. The lawyer argued that fighting would ultimately be pointless and advised Dino to simply pay the alimony and focus on his own life. Frustrated, he remained unwilling to accept losing to Monica. He did not want to give her his daughters, and he did not want to share his business with her. Dino repeatedly asked his friend for help in getting rid of Monica. One day he met Rick and told him that he had infected Monica with HIV, claiming that she was now seriously ill and would soon die of AIDS. This news made Rick smile, and Dino felt happy, believing that this punishment was enough for Monica. However, in early 2012, the situation changed. In January, Dino and Monica had another argument at their mansion, which their daughters witnessed. During the fight, Monica became frightened, took the girls to her room, and locked the door. Unsure of what to do, she called the police for help. However, Dino had already called 911 first, claiming he had been hit in the face, and showing the police a photo of small scratches on his neck. The police sided with Dino and arrested Monica, taking her to the police station. She spent a day in a cell with dangerous criminals. Soon, a case of misdemeanor and domestic violence was opened. Later that month, Dino obtained a restraining order against Monica, forcing her to move out of their mansion. Dino's ex-wife, Leisha Devine, revealed that during their divorce, Dino accused her of domestic violence and falsely claimed she used illegal additives. Dino was determined to keep custody of their children and succeeded in doing so. After the divorce, Leisha lost custody of the children, the family home, and their joint business that produced food additives and cosmetics. Leisha described Dino as calculating, mean, and heartless, believing he had slandered both her and Monica for his own gain. Unlike Lydia, Monica decided to fight back. After 13 months, she proved her innocence, was cleared of all domestic violence charges, and was allowed to reunite with her daughters. In a fit of rage, Dino contacted Rick, asking him to make Monica disappear from his life forever. Dino frequently reminded Rick, calling him 5 to 10 times a week, that he needed to eliminate Monica quickly. He wanted it to appear as though she had died due to addiction-related violence. He wished for her death to be painful and brutal, even envisioning her head being severed and her body discarded in a ditch. On October 1, 2013, Dino and Rick met for lunch at a cafe. At that time, Dino knew Monica was on vacation in Mexico. During their meal, Rick informed Dino that he had hired someone in Mexico and that Monica would be dead within a few hours. When Rick questioned how the daughters would cope without their mother, Dino dismissed Rick's concerns, insisting he was a good father and would find them a new, caring mother, someone much better than Monica. The friends then talked about payment. Dino promised to pay Rick $80,000 for the planned crime. He wanted to see Monica's murder reported in the newspapers. Their meeting lasted about an hour and a half, but only 15 minutes were spent discussing the crime. After the meeting, Rick said goodbye to Dino and went home. However, Rick knew that Dino would never read about Monica's death in the newspapers because he had already contacted the police. Their entire conversation in the cafe was recorded on a dictaphone that Rick had hidden under the table. Additionally, undercover police officers were seated at other tables in the cafe, watching them closely. Monica was thankful to Rick for not killing her. She had been hiding in a hotel in California, waiting for Dino to be arrested. On October 22, 2015, Dino was arrested at his luxurious mansion in Valencia in front of his daughters. He was charged with attempted murder. Dino denied the charges, claiming that Rick had set him up to take over his business. He accused Rick of wanting to kill Monica, so she would not interfere with their business dealings, stating that Rick often complained about Monica trying to terminate their contracts with the military. While Dino was in prison, he offered a cellmate money to meet Rick. When Rick learned of this, he became scared and decided to leave California and go into hiding. Prosecutors also discovered that Dino had secretly transferred $4.5 million abroad and was planning to escape the country with his children, but his plans fell through. As a result, he was moved to solitary confinement and prohibited from using a mobile phone. Regarding Rick Furman, the authorities discovered during the investigation that he had served only 1 year in the Army and had a troubled military career. He was wounded and subsequently demobilized. There were some unusual aspects related to Rick in the case. For instance, the authorities found that Rick had deceived Dino multiple times by claiming they had signed a military contract for food supplement supplies. Rick admitted to forging a signature to convince Dino that a significant commercial deal was forthcoming, hoping to distract him from negative thoughts and lift his spirits. Fortunately for Monica, Rick did not harm her. He tricked Dino into believing that this would make Dino leave Monica alone and calm down. Prosecutors thought that Dino and Rick were a bad match. They had done business together and had been friends for a long time. The judge described Rick as a chameleon. Although there were suspicions that Rick was a fraud, he was not charged with any crimes. When Dino's trial began, he continued to deny his guilt, claiming he was the victim in this situation. According to Dino, his only mistake was working too hard and trusting his friend, who turned out to be a traitor. The judge offered Dino a plea deal. Facing the possibility of life in prison, he could significantly reduce his sentence by accepting responsibility. Dino agreed and pleaded guilty to attempted second-degree murder, explaining that he could not refuse the deal because of his mother's request. In 2014, Dino Guglielmelli was convicted and received a 9-year prison sentence. Monica was dissatisfied with this outcome, stating that her life was worth more. During the court proceedings, she questioned, "Does the missed shot make me less guilty?" Did Dino become less of a criminal because Rick intervened? After the verdict, Monica officially divorced Dino. She realized that her primary focus now was raising their daughters, Vendela and Sienna. Following their divorce, Monica inherited a mansion in Valencia from Dino. However, she felt unsafe living in such luxury and was anxious about every little noise. Consequently, she sold the property for $3 million and purchased a more modest home for herself and her daughters. Monica attempted to restart her cosmetics business, but it was not successful. She feels that without the turmoil caused by Dino, she could have achieved a brilliant career and true success. Dino's company, Creations Garden, was sold at auction and the proceeds were used to pay off debts. Dino served his prison sentence in California and was released in 2021. The end of the Dino Guglielmelli case is a cautionary tale of the dire consequences of ambition and immorality. A successful businessman with a multimillion-dollar company, he ended up in trouble with the law when he tried to resolve personal conflicts with violence. This story not only highlights the importance of the law in protecting people from dangerous schemes, but also reminds us that greed and selfishness can lead to the downfall of any success, no matter how great. Moving on to the next case. The case of Hunt family. In New South Wales, there is a small rural town named Lockhart, situated between Sydney and Melbourne, where the central figures of this story resided. With a population of approximately 800, it was a quiet and tightly knit community. Here stood the farm belonging to the Hunt family, who had 3 children. The head of the family, Jeff Hunt, was 44 years old, and his wife, Kim, was 3 years his junior. They had met during their university years, where both were active and athletic. They were instantly drawn to each other and became inseparable, eventually marrying and aspiring to raise a large, loving family. The residents of Lockhart held the Hunts in high regard, valuing them for their kindness, friendliness, and active participation in the community. Kim Hunt had always dreamed of helping others. After finishing school, she enrolled in university to study medicine. Upon graduation, she began working in a hospital as a nurse in the intensive care unit, where she took pride in saving lives. She felt that her dream had finally been realized. In her free time, she enjoyed horseback riding and worked on the family farm, growing rapeseed alongside her brother, Alan, continuing their parents' legacy. At the time of these events, the family was navigating a difficult period in their lives. Jeff and Kim supported each other, which helped them appreciate each other's positive qualities. They had 3 children who adored them: Fletcher, the eldest at 10 years old, Mia, aged 8, and Phoebe, the youngest at 6. The family was well respected in their town, partly because of their active involvement in local volunteer work. However, they encountered serious challenges. In 2012, Kim and her youngest daughter, Phoebe, were involved in a severe car accident when Kim lost control, causing the vehicle to roll over twice. While Phoebe sustained only minor injuries, Kim's condition was far more critical. Doctors fought to save her life, and she spent a long period in a medically induced coma, ultimately surviving against the odds. Following this traumatic event, she underwent a lengthy recovery process. Initially, doctors believed she might only be suitable as an organ donor and did not expect her to regain a normal life. However, Jeff, her husband, refused to accept this prognosis. He devoted himself to supporting Kim through her rehabilitation, believing they could overcome the challenges. With his encouragement, Kim gradually relearned to walk, eat, speak, and perform daily tasks. Nonetheless, it was clear she would never fully return to her former self. Jeff assumed the responsibilities of caring for his children and wife while continuing to work. Although relatives offered some assistance, it was insufficient. To ease their burden, Jeff hired a nurse for Kim and a housekeeper, which significantly improved their lives. Doctors acknowledged Jeff's crucial role in Kim's recovery, but specialists and family members noted that the accident had fundamentally altered her life and personality. She lost her temper easily and experienced frequent mood swings, often directed at Jeff. Despite this, Jeff remained patient, fully understanding the difficulties of her recovery. Over time, gradual improvements became evident. Kim began walking and moving around more, progressively participating in household chores and striving not to be a burden. She was accustomed to being independent and self-sufficient, so she aimed to return to her previous lifestyle, though found it extremely challenging. Managing the household and caring for 3 children was demanding for someone recovering from a severe car accident that caused significant brain and spinal cord injuries. This created immense daily stress, which began to affect all aspects of the household, including her relationship with Jeff. He too was feeling the strain. In addition to household challenges, Jeff faced serious financial pressures. Initially, he struggled to balance supporting his family with the growing financial burden. While Kim managed the home and children, he also worked on the farm, making it difficult to handle everything, especially during the harvest. They were spending large sums on medications, leaving them struggling to make ends meet. During Kim's rehabilitation, Jeff experienced several nervous breakdowns due to the overwhelming stress. Doctors, meanwhile, observed significant improvement in Kim's mental health. Previously, she had confided to them that she was struggling and often contemplated death. Kim believed it would be easier for everyone if she died in an accident, thinking it would spare others from the burden of supporting her. To prevent any potential tragedy, all firearms were removed from the Hunt family farm. However, because they were necessary for self-defense and farming, the firearms were quickly returned but kept hidden from Kim. She had been on extended leave from work, which she greatly missed, as it had once brought her joy. What weighed most heavily on her were the children, whom she loved dearly and spent all her time with. In 2013, she began to recover and gradually returned to work as a nurse. Initially, she was unable to work as she had before, as she quickly became fatigued and frequently forgot things. To support her rehabilitation, she began with a reduced workload, working no more than 8 hours a week as a junior staff intern. She also resumed volunteering, focusing on topics that were meaningful to her. She spoke on road safety and traumatic brain injuries, sharing her own experiences to connect with others and provide support. By August 2014, the Hunt family felt they were returning to a normal life. Kim's sister, Jenny, visited to celebrate Phoebe's 6th birthday. The celebration evoked memories of happier times before the tragedy, bringing Jenny joy. It seemed that life had settled down and that they had overcome their struggles. However, Jenny had no idea this would be her final visit with her younger sister. On September 8, 2014, Kim took the children to the school bus stop for their usual day at school. In the afternoon, the housekeeper, Lauren, arrived to assist with housework. The children's school day went smoothly, and around 3:30 p.m., Kim and the kids returned home. The previous day had been Father's Day, and Jeff was supposed to spend it with the children while Kim rested. Due to her injuries, Kim often became tired quickly and required naps. Overall, the day was pleasant until a minor conflict arose between Jeff and their eldest son, 10-year-old Fletcher, over a football game. Jeff, who usually refereed the children's matches, disagreed with Fletcher's actions during the game, causing tension. Kim comforted Fletcher following the disagreement. Later, Jeff decided to visit his parents on the farm for the holiday without his family. He explained that Kim, the children, and Lauren remained at home to complete their chores, which is why they did not accompany him. His parents noticed that their son appeared withdrawn that day. He did not smile as he usually did and communicated very little. It was difficult to get him to speak, which was unusual for him since he was normally cheerful, sociable, and positive. This time, he seemed sad, and his parents quickly realized something was amiss. They attempted to ask Jeff what had occurred, but he avoided answering and eventually returned home. According to Lauren's testimony, there was a minor conflict between Jeff and Kim that day. It did not appear serious but had upset Jeff, who then went to play golf, leaving his wife with the children. When he returned, he instructed the children to shower. Around 7 p.m., they watched a family television show, had a snack, and went to bed. Kim remained upset from the earlier argument. Her frustration stemmed from the fight and Jeff's choices, including giving the children unhealthy food and allowing them to watch television, which went against her rules. She also mentioned that one of her husband's brothers had taken money from the family fund to purchase a house and a car. Additionally, she was angry that her husband was giving large sums of money from the fund to his family. Around 7:30 p.m., the house grew quiet after Lauren departed. She said goodbye to the family, with the children hugging her, and Jeff called out, "Goodbye, thank you, see you tomorrow." What occurred in the house afterward remains unclear. Later, Lauren informed the police that the family atmosphere had been tense throughout the day, but she never anticipated the horror that unfolded after her departure. Lauren returned to the farm during the day as usual. As she approached the house, she noticed Kim lying on the lawn, still in her pajamas. Concerned that Kim had fallen and needed help, Lauren rushed over. However, as she drew closer, she saw that Kim was motionless, her face covered by 2 jackets. When Lauren removed the jackets, she realized it was too late to help. Kim had died from a gunshot wound to the head and lay in a pool of blood. Her body was already cold, and the horrifying scene terrified Lauren. She immediately called emergency services. When the medics arrived, they confirmed that 41-year-old Kim Hunt was dead. Kim had been shot at close range, with the bullet entering just above her right eye, leaving her no chance of survival. The medics entered the house and soon discovered a shell casing on the floor in the hallway, indicating that the murder had taken place there. When police arrived and searched the house, they found Fletcher, Phoebe, and Mia dead in their bedrooms, all 3 children shot in the head. A note written on a napkin was found on the kitchen table. The note, written in adult handwriting, read, "I'm sorry, it's all my fault." However, it was unclear who had written it. Although it was believed that Jeff, the husband, had written the note, he could not be located. 2 possibilities were considered. Either intruders attacked the house, murdered Jeff's family, and kidnapped him, or he himself was responsible for the deaths and had gone into hiding. Ultimately, the case could only be resolved if Jeff was found. He was therefore declared a wanted man, and an active search was launched. There was no evidence of anyone else in the house, no fingerprints, no DNA, and no signs of forced entry. News of this tragic event spread quickly throughout the community. People were shocked and frightened, struggling to understand what had happened in the Hunt family home that night. Many found it difficult to believe that their neighbor, Jeff, could have committed such acts. People were genuinely concerned about his whereabouts and safety, fearing that he could be the next victim of the killers. As a result, the community called for a swift resolution to the case and the arrest of those responsible to restore safety in the area. Police conducted a thorough investigation around the farm for an extended period until fresh tire tracks were discovered the following day. These tracks led them to a small dam located a few hundred meters from the Hunt family home. Divers searching the reservoir, which was approximately 1.5 meters deep, found the body of Jeff Hunt along with a shotgun. He had died from a gunshot wound to the top of the head, apparently ending his life by placing the gun in his mouth. Examination revealed that his body had been in the water for around 30 hours. When experts compared Jeff's handwriting from cards he had previously given to his wife with the note found on the dining table, they confirmed a 100% match. This evidence indicated that he was responsible for the tragic events. It was impossible to completely reconstruct the events because there were no witnesses. It appears that Jeff coldly murdered his 3 sleeping children and then shot Kim as she tried to escape the house. He likely regretted his actions afterward and wrote a suicide note, leaving himself no way to turn back. Jeff then left his family, got into his old car, and drove along a dirt road. After traveling a few hundred meters, he turned into a wheat paddock and headed toward the pond, where the abandoned car was found. The motive behind the crime remained completely unclear. Many local residents had held Jeff Hunt in high regard and found it difficult to believe that he could have been capable of such violence. Despite the clear evidence against him, in the town of Lockhart, Jeff was a respected figure, a farmer, a referee for children's football games, a volunteer, and an active participant in community events. This admiration prompted a peculiar reaction among the locals. Some speculated that the weapon may have been in Kim's hands, as she had previously expressed a desire to end her life. Some even labeled her a witch, claiming that she was responsible for the crimes, accusing her of killing her family due to her mood swings, framing her husband, and then ending her own life. This scenario was physically impossible. Jeff was found with a shotgun, while Kim was discovered far from the shell casing where the shots had been fired. Considering the injuries on her body, it was obvious she could not have discharged that gun. Examinations showed she lacked the physical ability to shoot a shotgun, as her right side was impaired. Therefore, experts were unanimous in concluding that Jeff was the killer. Despite police conclusively proving that Jeff Hunt possessed the weapon and was responsible for the deaths of his entire family, some people continued to defend him. Jeff had cultivated such a positive public image that many regarded him as a martyr, despite the fact that he had murdered 3 innocent children and his wife, who had already survived a serious car accident. Justifying his actions, under any circumstances, was impossible. The community came together to raise funds and organize a funeral for the victims. Police faced challenges in determining a motive for the crime. Although Jeff had been upset that day due to an argument with his son and a conflict with his wife, this behavior was not typical for him. When Lauren was present, the situation did not escalate. Despite a tense atmosphere in the house, Jeff and Kim generally resolved disputes calmly and respectfully, maintaining their composure. There were no indications suggesting that a crisis of this magnitude was imminent. Lauren had never witnessed Jeff lose his temper, strike his wife or children, or even raise his voice. She could not have imagined he would resort to violence. As a result, she and others doubted that Jeff could have committed the crime. In contrast, Kim sometimes yelled at her husband and children when upset, or when she forgot to take her antidepressants. It was difficult to believe that Jeff could have been suffering from such deep depression that it led him to murder his family. Hiding such a serious condition from relatives and from Lauren, who saw them daily, would have been nearly impossible. Yet, even she saw no signs that anything tragic was about to occur. Jeff did experience some financial difficulties, but they were manageable and did not prevent him from supporting his family or seeking solutions. He was not the type to retreat when faced with challenges, especially after carrying significant responsibility for many years. Police, after gathering evidence over time, concluded that the crime was not premeditated, but rather a spontaneous reaction. This was unusual for Jeff. He had plans for the following day and the upcoming week. Before Lauren departed, he had behaved like a responsible family man and caring father, preparing meals for the children for school and arranging a tennis match with a friend for the weekend. It was revealed that Jeff had been seeing a psychotherapist and had confided that he feared being left alone with the children if Kim were to leave him. Just weeks before her death, Kim told a relative that she was unhappy with Jeff's handling of their finances, which often caused money problems. She also admitted that she no longer loved him, felt no attraction, and was even considering divorce. The tension in their relationship may have escalated, as Kim wanted a separation and had expressed her desire to divorce Jeff, which could have triggered a violent response. The investigation into the incident involved several psychology and psychiatry specialists who provided important insights. One expert, after reviewing the case and speaking with the deceased's relatives, observed that Jeff exhibited signs of depression, including persistent feelings of sadness and anxiety. Shortly before the shooting, he had visited his family appearing distressed and remained unusually quiet, suggesting he was concealing something. His family noticed this atypical behavior and attempted to understand what was troubling him. In situations like this, identifying the underlying issues can be challenging, particularly because men often avoid discussing their emotions and perceive asking for help as a sign of weakness. They typically internalize their struggles, which can accumulate over time and ultimately result in an emotional outburst, sometimes with tragic consequences. Jeff may have struggled with his problems for many years while trying to maintain a facade of normalcy, concealing his difficulties and worsening his situation. Psychologists suggest that he likely sought escape due to depression and a profound sense of hopelessness. His use of a firearm to inflict a single fatal injury indicates that he probably did not intend to harm his wife and children deliberately. Lauren reported that Jeff appeared to be under immense pressure from various aspects of his life, including the challenges of caring for his sick wife, Kim, and coping with her changed personality, which may have pushed him to a breaking point. Kim's family also felt that her condition had made life extremely difficult. Experts believe that Jeff never initially intended to harm his family. Instead, he was likely overwhelmed by personal issues and worries, and the stress stemming from the impending divorce may have further contributed to his state of mind. However, in a sudden shift of thought, he chose to end the lives of those around him. He may have convinced himself that, as the family's primary provider, he was sparing them from a future of poverty. In a tragic attempt to prevent what he perceived as an impending disaster, Jeff committed the unimaginable act of killing his family quickly and painlessly, believing he was saving them from suffering. The tragic case of the Hunt family represented one of the bloodiest Father's Days in Australian crime history. Moving on to the next case. The case of Jake Wagner. Hannah Mae Rodan, 13, and Edward Jake Wagner, 18, met at a dance and quickly became romantically involved. Consequently, the Rodan and Wagner families began spending time together, sharing weekends and parties, and Hannah Mae and Jake's affection continued to grow. When Hannah Mae turned 15, she revealed that she was pregnant. Jake was thrilled by the news and hoped his family would be as well. The Wagner family placed great importance on tradition and family lineage, and they cherished children, seeing them as a continuation of their customs. In fact, they often passed names down through generations, as seen in Jake's family, with his father being George Wagner III and his brother George Wagner IV. By contrast, the Rodin family approached family life more practically. Even though they were divorced, Christopher Rodin Sr. and Dana Rodin remained close and devoted to their 3 children, prioritizing their happiness above all else. Unlike the Wagner family, the Rodins lived modestly, with Christopher working odd jobs and Dana serving as a nurse's assistant. Despite financial limitations, the Rodin family instilled strong traditional values in their children, including Christopher Jr., Hannah May, and Clarence Franck. The family was overjoyed when Hannah May gave birth to a daughter named Sophie, and they hosted a large celebration. However, when Jake asked Hannah May to move in with him and his family, she refused. She became increasingly cautious of Jake due to his growingly controlling and aggressive behavior. Hannah May had initially been drawn to Jake's caring and thoughtful nature, but over time, she realized that he was attempting to restrict her independence. Jake's aggression repeatedly caused Hannah May's feelings for him to diminish. Her refusal to move in with Jake created tension between them. Jake believed that Hannah May was preventing Sophie from being raised in a safe and healthy environment. Despite Hannah May's denials, Jake grew more controlling. Hannah May ultimately ended the relationship in March 2015, exhausted by Jake's aggressive behavior. At that stage, the Wagner family sought sole custody of Sophie. Jake had to exert considerable effort to persuade Hannah May to sign over custody of the child to him and his brother. However, Hannah May refused. In a heated exchange, Jake angrily sent a text message declaring that if necessary, he would use force to obtain custody of Sophie. This disclosure confirmed the Wagner family's willingness to employ coercion and intimidation to achieve their objectives. To protect herself and her daughter from this unscrupulous family, Hannah May chose to distance herself and raise her child independently. She worked as a nursing assistant, continued her studies, and cared for Sophie on her own. The situation escalated when Hannah became pregnant again. Although Hannah May confirmed that the child was not Jake's, he remained suspicious and attempted to uncover the truth. In December 2015, Jake accessed Hannah's social media accounts but found no evidence of infidelity. A trial ensued involving repeated interactions between the Wagner family and Hannah May. In one text message, Hannah asserted that the Wagner family would have to eliminate her before gaining custody of Sophie. Jake shared this message with his family, inciting their anger. His grandmother, Rita Newcomb, 65, retaliated by forging an important custody-related document. During the custody trial for Sophie, Christopher Rodin and George Wagner, 3 engaged in a heated confrontation. This incident caused a total rupture in the relationship between the 2 families. The Wagner family soon conceived a sinister plan. They regarded Hannah Rodin as uncooperative and concluded that the only solution was to eliminate her and the entire Rodin family in order to gain custody of Sophie. By Christmas 2016, this twisted notion marked the beginning of a horrific crime. While others focused on love and celebration during the holiday season, the Wagner family had different intentions. They held a family vote to decide whether to proceed with their malevolent plan or not. After everyone consented, they assigned each person specific roles and began preparing. The Wagner family spent 5 months gathering intelligence on the Rodin family home, including surveillance cameras, daily routines, and the work schedules of each Rodin family member. Each member of the Wagner family was given a designated task. Angela Wagner purchased a communications blocking device and planned to secretly install it on the Rodin family's phone to prevent anyone from contacting the police. George Wagner III offered to construct a homemade silencer and manage transportation on the night of the crime, securing a truck without attracting attention. Meanwhile, Sophie was safe at home with Angela because the court had granted Hannah and Jake joint custody of Sophie. The Wagner family chose the timing of their plan to coincide with their custody period to ensure Sophie's safety. It was evident that the Wagner family had meticulously planned every detail to execute the crime flawlessly. At approximately 8 a.m. on April 22, 2016, George Wagner III visited Christopher Rodin under the pretext of offering a job opportunity that could improve the family's financial situation. However, The job offer was merely an excuse to gain entry to the house. A moment later, Christopher Rodan Sr. opened the door. Shortly afterward, as usual, Bobby Jo Manley arrived at Christopher's home to tend to the Rodan family's animals. While outside the house, she noticed someone inside, which was unusual for that hour. Normally, every member of the Rodan family would be away at work. However, upon entering the house, she found Christopher and his cousin Gary, 38, lying in a pool of blood. Horrified, Bobby grabbed her phone and called emergency services, reporting what she had witnessed and requesting immediate assistance. Still trembling, Bobby went to other relatives' homes and knocked loudly on one of their doors. A 3-year-old boy, the son of Clarence Frankie Rodan, appeared, and Bobby asked him where his parents were. The boy did not respond, but simply pointed toward the bed. Upon entering, she observed another horrifying scene. Clarence and his wife, Hannah Hazel, lay motionless, and between them was their 6-month-old baby, still alive but covered in the blood of Clarence and Hannah Hazel. Following Bobby's 911 call, police quickly arrived at the scene. As officers approached the Rodan property, a concerned neighbor intervened, requesting that the officers check 2 additional addresses of family members. His concern proved valid, as police discovered more bodies in a 3rd house. The victims were identified as Dana, 19-year-old Hannah Mae, and 16-year-old Christopher Jr. The attackers had spared Hannah's youngest child, a baby girl only a few days old. Later, another victim was discovered, 44-year-old Kenneth, the elder Rodan sibling, who lived a 15-minute walk from the others. By 2 p.m., 8 victims had been identified: Christopher Sr., Dana, Clarence, Hannah Hazel, Christopher Jr., Hannah Mae, Kenneth, and Gary. The only survivors were the young children, a 3-year-old, a 6-month-old, a 4-day-old newborn, and 2-year-old Sophie, who had been at the Wagner home during the attack. Upon examining the bodies, police concluded that all the victims had been killed in their sleep by gunshot wounds. Detectives later reconstructed the events of that day. Christopher Sr. had been awake when the attackers entered, as evidenced by a wound on his right arm. Christopher Sr. attempted to defend himself, but was struck by 9 bullets to the head, torso, and limbs. Additionally, 5 bullets were recovered from Dana Rodan's neck and head. The rest of the family died from gunshot wounds to the head. Gary was shot 5 times, Christopher Jr. 4 times, Clarence and his wife Hannah Hazel 3 times each, and Hannah Mae twice. Kenneth was shot only once. In total, the assailants fired 32 rounds, with some shots discharged after the victims were already dead. Some bodies also exhibited signs of physical abuse. As no one in the area reported hearing anything, investigators concluded that silencers had been used, indicating a carefully planned and executed operation. It was evident that the victims had been specifically targeted and that someone sought revenge on the entire Rodan family. During the investigation, police recovered 5 Remington shell casings of various types and an unused bullet from a different firearm. The scope of the crime suggested the involvement of multiple perpetrators. Leonard Manley, Dana's father, stated that the criminals must have been familiar with the family, as otherwise the dogs would have barked loudly. Determining who carried out the attack kept police officers fully occupied. The Attorney General's office provided over $20,000 to cover the Rodan family's funeral expenses. The Rodan family was buried in stages. On April 28, 2016, Gary was the first to be laid to rest in South Shore, Kentucky. Hannah Hazel's funeral followed on May 1st in the village of Atway, Coteau County, Ohio. The remaining family members were buried on May 3rd in West Portsmouth, within the same county. Many local residents attended the funerals to pay their respects to the family. The surviving children were placed in the care of relatives. Fear gripped the neighborhood. Police advised the victims' relatives to take precautions and warned all residents of Pike to remain at home at night. The brutal mass murder outraged residents across the state, who demanded that the results of the investigation be made public and that the perpetrators be apprehended as quickly as possible. As part of the investigation, the 3 homes of the murdered family were thoroughly examined, followed by inspections of several vehicles the following day. Forensic experts participated in the investigation and meticulously examined the homes, but no DNA evidence of the suspects was discovered in any of the residences. Cameras had been installed in the houses, but they provided no useful information because they had been disabled. It appeared that the perpetrators had planned every detail carefully, leaving no traces behind. However, Detectives eventually discovered a critical piece of evidence that helped solve the case. An important detail was that marijuana plants were found at 3 crime scenes. At one location, approximately 200 plants were discovered. Police believed the cannabis had been cultivated for sale rather than personal use. This led to speculation about the possible involvement of Mexican drug traffickers. However, the quantity of cannabis found was too small to indicate an attack by an entire cartel. In January 2017, a close relative of the Rodan family was arrested for drug trafficking, which was considered coincidental. Leonard Manley stated that his daughter, Dana, had no involvement in the cannabis operations. Some family members confirmed that the older brothers, Christopher and Kenneth Rodan, grew marijuana, but they were unaware of any large-scale cultivation. Specialized equipment for breeding fighting chickens, as well as cages with roosters, were also discovered at the Rodan house. However, it soon became evident that illegal cockfighting was not the motive behind the homicides either. Months passed without uncovering the true reason for the crime. On April 13, 2017, local authorities announced that they lacked sufficient evidence to make any arrests. Nevertheless, prosecutor Rob Yum stated that the investigation remained active, suggesting that investigators had leads they were not yet prepared to disclose. Another year had passed since the mass crime, and the second memorial service for the victims went largely unnoticed. There was no coverage in the local press, and neither the sheriff nor the prosecutor attended the service, leading the community to believe that the investigation had stalled. However, on May 12, 2017, a special weapons and tactics team unexpectedly raided a home in Pike County, approximately 10 miles from the crime scene. Initially, the team was searching for suspects, but it was later revealed that they were gathering evidence. Detectives also searched a house in Adams County that had previously been owned by Jake Wagner. Although he had sold it by that time, the investigation took a dramatic turn on June 20, 2017, when the focus shifted to the Wagner family. The investigation involved 26-year-old Jake, 27-year-old George III, 47-year-old George IV, and 48-year-old Angela, who lived approximately 15 miles from the victims. The Wagner family had moved to Kenai, Alaska, claiming they were struggling to remain in the area. The Wagners expressed their affection for the Rodan family, stating that the deaths had devastated their family. The investigation soon reached a breakthrough. Authorities sought information from the public regarding the Wagner family's dealings in firearms, ammunition, vehicles, and related matters. According to the investigation, every member of the family had been involved in the crime that occurred on November 13, 2018. The Attorney General announced that the Wagners and their sons had been arrested and charged with planning and executing the murders. Rita Newcomb, the 65-year-old mother of Angela and Frida Wagner, as well as the mother of George Wagner III, had also been arrested for perjury and obstruction of justice. In 2019, Rita Newcomb underwent handwriting analysis to confirm her involvement in forging guardianship documents for Sophie. To avoid incarceration, she entered a plea deal. As a result, the charges against Frederica Wagner were dropped in June 2019. 2 years later, on April 22, 2021, Jake reached an agreement with the prosecution. In exchange for providing details of the crime, all family members would receive life sentences instead of the death penalty. Jake admitted to killing 5 of the 8 victims and faced 23 criminal charges, including 8 felonies. The remaining charges included theft, conspiracy, illegal possession of ammunition, forgery, interception of messages, unlawful use of property, obstruction of justice, corrupt activities, and unlawful intimate conduct with a young woman. Jake explained that he saw eliminating Hannah May as the only way to secure custody of his daughter. He believed that if he did not kill the entire Rodan family, they would seek revenge and refuse to grant him custody of Sophie. Angela was next to face trial on September 10th. She pleaded guilty to conspiracy, aggravated robbery, and tampering with evidence. In exchange for her testimony against the other defendants, the murder charge was dropped. Angela was sentenced to 30 years in prison. The trial of George Wagner IV began on August 28, 2022. Although he denied involvement in the crime, the prosecution presented evidence of his participation in the planning, execution, and cover-up. Ultimately, George IV was found guilty on 22 counts and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. George III's trial was scheduled for February 2024. Despite the convictions of his family members, he continued to maintain his innocence. The once harmonious family's descent into madness was confounding, and their actions were unforgivable. The Wagner family's crimes left 3 children orphaned, depriving them of the love of their parents, relatives, and a peaceful life. One could not help but wonder what Sophie would be like when she grew up and realized what had occurred. Moving on to the next case. The case of Marlene Oakes. Marlene was born on December 1, 1954, to her parents Lorraine and Billy. At the age of 16, she married a much older man, Bill Major, who was 26 at the time. Despite the large age difference, they quickly got along. The same year they married, they welcomed their first son, Donald. For years later, they had a daughter named Lalana. The family lived in Verona, a small town in the suburbs of Kentucky, USA. Verona is located near downtown Cincinnati. Bill worked as an auto mechanic, and according to Marlene's father, he was ambitious and had a great ability to persuade others. This gave him a significant advantage in his job. His auto repair shop was located near the interstate. A convenient location ensured he always had many customers. At that time, Marlene was a housewife, taking care of the children, while Bill was the main breadwinner for the family. However, their marriage was not a happy one. They argued frequently, and Bill often abused his wife. One day, a man named Glenn St. Hilaire arrived in town and quickly befriended Bill. He began working at Bill's shop, handling a variety of tasks. Originally from Canada, Glenn owned welding equipment and had extensive knowledge of cars, thus becoming a valuable assistant to Bill. He lived in a trailer near Bill's house, and eventually he and Marlene developed feelings for each other. After that, they began an affair with each other. Bill was always at work, which gave Glenn and Marlene the freedom to meet. Marlene felt drawn to Glenn, who was younger, calmer, and made her feel at ease. By October 1980, Marlene was 25 years old, while Bill was 35. He frequently resorted to violence against her, keeping the entire family in a state of fear. In this stressful situation, it is not surprising that she sought comfort from Glenn. At the time, Donald was 8 years old and Lalana was 4. Strangely, Bill not only tolerated her relationship with Glenn, but even encouraged it. Those close to the family were aware of the situation and found it shocking. However, events soon took a tragic turn. On the afternoon of October 11, 1980, Bill and Marlene had a big argument in their backyard, which the neighbors could hear clearly. Later that evening, Bill took his children, Donald and Lalana, to a neighbor's house, asking them to care for the kids for a day due to serious family issues. He told the neighbors that Marlene had run off with Glenn and that he needed time to process everything. The neighbors, however, knew that he was enraged over Marlene's relationship with Glenn. He beat her and the children because of it, and her car was missing. However, no matter Bill's explanation, no one could believe that Marlene, a mother wholeheartedly devoted to her children, would leave them. Afterwards, he contacted the police and repeated the same story he had shared with the neighbors. However, the details did not quite add up. Marlene's friends insisted that she deeply loved her children and would never abandon them. They also revealed that she was angry at him because of his abusive behavior. She confided in them that Bill had threatened to kill her if she left him to live with Glenn. A close friend even heard him describe in detail how he would kill her if she defied him. He had talked about dismembering her body and hiding the remains so thoroughly that they would never be found. Glenn, Marlene's lover, once heard Bill confess that he would attack her, decapitate her, and destroy her teeth so that the police could not identify her through dental records. Marlene began to fear that her plan to move in with Glenn could put her life in serious danger. In her diary, she wrote that Bill would only agree to sign divorce papers if she promised not to report his abuse of her and the children to the authorities. She was in a difficult position, not knowing what to do. She was exhausted by the toxic relationship and wanted to escape her controlling husband, but she was terrified of the consequences. Despite this, the police launched an investigation into her disappearance. She was officially declared a missing person. She was described as a petite woman with blonde hair and glasses. At the time she went missing, she had been wearing jeans and a blue-green checkered shirt. Her car was also reported missing. On October 11, 1980, Marlene called her sister to discuss the problems in her marriage. She was seeking advice, but her sister did not know how to help. She said she planned to file for divorce and fight for full custody of her children. She also shared another reason for her decision. Bill had been harassing their 8-year-old son, Donald. She felt very scared and could not bear it. She warned Bill to never touch the children again and threatened to kill him if he did. This made him furious. Marlene confided to her sister that she had evidence of Bill's abuse of Donald and had hidden it in a safe place where he could not find it. She assured her that if anything happened to her, the evidence would be turned over to the police. Later that day, she called her sister again, but this time she sounded very distressed. She had just had another argument with Bill. Marlene then gave Glenn her diary, which contained all the important incidents. She told him that if she ever went missing, detectives could find answers in the pages of her diary. She also told her sister the same thing during their phone call. That was the last time her family ever heard from her. On the night of October 11th, Glenn arrived at Bill's house after midnight and found the area around the trailer in disarray. Around 3 a.m., he encountered Bill and asked about Marlene. Bill claimed that Marlene had run away. However, Glenn found this hard to believe. He had recently seen her, and she had no intention of leaving her children behind. He knew she was a mother who was always devoted to her children, so she would never abandon them. It soon became clear to everyone that Bill was lying. During this time, the children had actually been staying with neighbors. He was the one who brought them there and told them that Marlene had run away with a lover. His story was riddled with contradictions, and he kept changing his account. Then, when Bill arrived at his neighbor's house, he even handed over all of his weapons to them to take care of the children, including a 9mm handgun and a .22 caliber rifle. He also sold his tractor to another neighbor, explaining that he was moving to live closer to his parents. A few days after Marlene's disappearance, Bill went to the police station to report the incident. He said that after an argument at home, she had left and he was convinced that she had run away with her lover. Following this, Glenn also contacted the police and provided information about the conflicts in the relationship between Marlene and Bill. He handed over to the police everything related to Marlene, including the diaries she had left with him. These diaries contained clues that were detrimental to Bill. Glenn also recounted Bill's unusual behavior after Marlene's disappearance. According to him, Bill's transfer of weapons to neighbors and the sale of valuable assets were very suspicious. This suggested that Bill seemed to be planning to run away. He believed that Bill was involved in Marlene's disappearance. After speaking with Glenn, the police began investigating Marlene's case more thoroughly. They believed that she did not simply run away from her husband Bill, but that the matter might be more serious. It was very likely that one of the two men, Bill or Glenn, was involved in this disappearance. Bill and Glenn were both considered prime suspects in the case. However, both denied any involvement. Glenn was cooperative and willingly shared all the information he had with the police. Bill, on the other hand, gave conflicting testimony and behaved strangely during a polygraph test, making him even more suspicious. At this time, the police reviewed Marlene's diary, which detailed the motive for the crime and even hinted at what Bill may have done to her. However, there was still not enough evidence to charge Bill with murder. No evidence or trace of the incident was found in the trailer, the area surrounding the vehicle, or at the auto repair shop. The police spoke to Marlene's children, Donald and Lalana. They paid particular attention to 8-year-old Donald, hoping he might be able to provide some information, especially considering the contents of Marlene's diary. However, the boy was too frightened, making it extremely difficult to gather any information from him. Lalana was not questioned at all because she was too young. Although Donald did not reveal anything useful, Bill violently beat him after learning about the police interviews. Around the same time, he also began abusing his 4-year-old daughter, Lalana, treating her cruelly. He often took the children to his workplace, where he continued to abuse them. The police also questioned Marlene's sister, who firmly rejected the idea that Marlene would abandon her family and children to be with her lover. According to her sister, Marlene had planned to divorce Bill amicably, gain custody of the children, and then start a new life with Glenn. She had no intention of running away to avoid her problems. At that time, it was known that Marlene had disappeared with the car without taking any personal belongings. But even assuming that she had run away, why would she leave all her important belongings at home, including her wallet, driver's license, money, and jewelry? Furthermore, she did not bring the medications that her doctor had just prescribed. This medication was essential for her, making it unlikely she would leave without it. All of these details did not fit the theory that she had left on her own. Despite extensive investigation, no clues were found. Investigators continued questioning everyone who knew the family. During a conversation with the police, Bill admitted he no longer believed Marlene was alive, which raised suspicions. He also began agreeing with her sister and Glenn that it was unlikely she would have abandoned all her belongings and disappeared without leaving any message. After Marlene disappeared, Bill began telling Donald and Lalana the whole truth about her relationship, detailing her encounters with her lover, Glenn. He seemed intent on turning the children against their mother. He accused her of drug use, abusing alcohol, and even selling her body. He claimed she had left because she no longer loved them. Donald and Lalana grew up thinking that their mother, Marlene, was a troubled person who had abandoned them. This left a deep wound in their souls. They could not understand why she had abandoned them. They had no choice but to stay with their father, Bill, who raised them harshly. Lalana later recalled that after her mother's disappearance, Bill became a tyrant. He frequently subjected her and Donald to physical and emotional abuse. On one occasion, he hit Donald so severely that the boy could not walk for several days. While the police were still investigating, Bill decided to sell all of his assets, including his home and auto repair shop. He then moved with his children to East Providence, Rhode Island, to be closer to his parents. There, he bought a trailer and stabilized life. The decision to move into a trailer was unusual. Bill gave up a comfortable lifestyle and a successful store in exchange for much more difficult living circumstances. His new home was considered unfavorable and not the best place to raise young children. A year after Marlene's disappearance, he remarried. His new wife was named Pauline. For a long time, they lived together but could not officially marry because Bill could not legally end his marriage with Marlene. Eventually, he managed to file for divorce and married Pauline. Meanwhile, Glenn stayed in Verona. He found work at a local factory and was one of the few people, along with Marlene's family, who continued to search for answers about her disappearance. He frequently visited the police station to check on the investigation. The police were not only searching for Marlene, but also for her car, yet no leads were found. They sent her dental records and other information to nearby cities and states, hoping for a breakthrough. Although the search was still ongoing, there was no sign that Marlene was dead. Police speculated that she might have wanted to leave her current life behind to start anew somewhere else. On November 29, 1981, a hunter discovered a partial skull in the woods, a few miles from the old trailer park where Bill's family had lived. The bone was heavily damaged and showed marks from the object that had severed it from the body. For many years, the police were unable to identify the victim. All they could determine was that the bone belonged to a white woman under 30 years old. There were signs of dismemberment, and the cause of death was determined to be multiple gunshot wounds. As the years passed, Bill continued to live with Pauline, but his treatment of Donald and Lalana became increasingly cruel. At one point, Lalana became so desperate that she confided in her stepmother Pauline, telling her about the abuse. She revealed that Bill had molested Donald and then raped her, threatening to kill them if they spoke out. Pauline was furious when she learned the truth and could not remain silent. She confronted Bill, warning him that if he did it again, she would call the police. For a while, Bill promised to control himself. By 1985, Bill and Pauline had a child together. By this time, Marlene had been missing for 13 years. Lalana once again confided in Pauline about Bill's harassment. This time, Pauline reported the incident to the police. Bill was arrested, and his children, Donald and Lalana, admitted that they had prayed he would not return home. He was sentenced to 15 years in prison for his crimes. After his release, he lost interest in his family. Pauline ended their relationship immediately after his arrest, but she refused to take care of his children, Donald and Lalana. Eventually, they went to live with their maternal grandmother, Marlene's mother. At this point, Lalana asked her grandmother why her mother had abandoned her and Donald. The grandmother replied that Marlene abandoned the children only because Bill had killed Marlene. She firmly believed he was involved in Marlene's disappearance, though there was no concrete evidence to prove it. After his release from prison, Bill began a relationship with a woman named KLR. He concealed his dark past from her, claiming he had been imprisoned for armed robbery. He did not want her to know about the abuse he had inflicted on his children. The two married and lived together happily for a while. However, in 1995, Bill suffered a stroke and became confined to a wheelchair. By then, Lalana was an adult and capable of handling matters on her own. She decided to look into the disappearance of her mother, Marlene. The first step she took was buying a notebook to document all the clues. She then approached Bill and pleaded with him to disclose the location of her mother's remains so that she could provide her with a proper burial. Lalana even promised him that if he told her the truth, she would not report him to the police. However, he outright refused and told her that if she thought he would reveal where he had hidden her mother's body, she was crazy. Despite her attempts to persuade him, he remained uncooperative. Understanding that Bill would not help, Lalana launched her own investigation. She began speaking with relatives, close friends, and acquaintances who might have information about her mother, Marlene. During her search, she learned that her mother had kept a diary where she documented significant events in her life. She also discovered that the police had confiscated the diary as evidence back in 1980. She managed to obtain permission to review her mother's case file, including the diary entries. What she read left her deeply shocked. Marlene's diary revealed that she was aware of Bill's abuse of their son, Donald. She also discovered that Bill had been convicted in 1975 for molesting 2 young boys. After learning this, she wrote that all her feelings for her husband, Bill, had vanished. She demanded that he never touch their child again. The diary detailed Bill's erratic behavior and threats, including his frequent boasts about knowing how to commit the perfect crime. He claimed that to avoid identification, one would need to remove all the victim's teeth. Marlene also expressed her plans to file for divorce and seek full custody of her children. In one of her final diary entries, Marlene wrote that she had threatened Bill with divorce and cut off contact between him and his children. He did not want that to happen, but not out of love for them. In 2000, Lalana contacted the police and shared the information from Marlene's diaries. This prompted the police to re-examine the diaries and immediately question Bill and Donald. Donald provided detailed accounts of Bill's cruelty. Lalana also learned that sometime after Marlene's disappearance, a skull had been discovered in a forested area near their old house. She located the exact spot and visited it herself, hoping to uncover more evidence, but her search was unsuccessful. The police had an important piece of evidence, a skull that had no teeth, which matched what Bill had said about the perfect crime. At the time, identification of remains relied heavily on dental records, as modern identification technology was not available. When experts tried traditional DNA testing, they discovered severe bone damage, making analysis impossible. So they turned to newer technology, specifically mitochondrial DNA analysis. However, the county refused to pay the $120 cost of the study, as it was not certain that it would help the case. Lalana had to raise money to pay for the procedure. For this, she organized a small fund. At that time, such research was conducted only in one laboratory in the United States. The amount of money needed to be raised was huge, but her family was enthusiastic in supporting her. For example, her family members contributed their entire savings to cover the cost of the analysis. Finally, she earned enough money. County forensic experts took DNA samples from Donald and Lalana to compare with the DNA from the skull that was found. The results showed that the skull did indeed belong to Marlene, who had been missing. This confirmed the suspicions of her children and relatives that she had been murdered. They learned about the discovery of the skull. Bill's father called the police to report that his son had killed Marlene. According to his account, Bill had attacked her, then dismembered her body and scattered the body parts far apart. To prevent identification, he destroyed the upper and lower jaws. Bill also submerged her car in the river, and he informed the authorities of its location. When they tried to recover the car, they encountered many difficulties due to the strong river currents, which may have pushed the car far from its original location. They tried draining the river and used experienced divers, but the search was complicated. Investigators decided to enlist Bill's father's help in gathering more evidence against Bill. They instructed him to call Bill, get a confession during the conversation, and record it. To unnerve Bill, they told him about an investigation initiated by Lalana. Upon hearing that his daughter was looking for Marlene, Bill became enraged and told her to stop looking and forget about her mother. Bill believed the case had long been closed and that he was no longer at risk. Nevertheless, during the recorded phone call, he confessed to the crime. On July 25, 2001, Bill Major was arrested and charged with the murder of Marlene. During the interrogation, Bill admitted to the crime but attempted to place the blame on his wife, Marlene. He claimed they were in her car when she pulled out a gun and began threatening him. According to Bill, a struggle broke out, during which he accidentally attacked her several times. He claimed that there were 2 bullets in her head and 4 in her body. However, this testimony seemed more intentional than accidental in a fight. The trial started in 2003 when Bill was 59 years old. After suffering a stroke in 1995, he had lost the ability to walk and appeared in court in a wheelchair. During the trial, his children, Donald and Lalana, testified about the abuse and violence they endured during their childhood. They recounted what happened inside the family trailer. Bill's lawyer argued that his actions were linked to nervous tension, claiming that Marlene frequently threatened him, leading to emotional breakdowns. The defense also argued that the murder was an act of self-defense. After a lengthy argument from the defense attorney, Bill looked at his children and smiled, clearly satisfied with the attorney's presentation. He was confident he would remain a free man. However, Lalana smiled back at her father and expressed her hope that he would spend the rest of his life in prison for what he had done to them and to Marlene. After deliberating for over 40 minutes, the jury found Bill Major guilty of Marlene's murder. He was sentenced to life in prison. On December 7, 2016, Bill applied for parole, but his request was denied. He died in prison on October 15, 2020. Lalana was satisfied with the outcome of the investigation. She had spent much of her life pursuing justice. She believes that Bill murdered Marlene at that time because he suspected Marlene of having an affair. She believes that Bill meticulously planned the murder out of fear of going to jail and wanting to maintain control over his children, which would allow him to continue to torment them. Notably, Bill's children, Donald and Lalana, refused to take their father's last name. Lalana later changed it to her husband's. She regrets that during her childhood, she was influenced by her domineering father, causing her to mistakenly believe that her mother had abandoned her. The rest of Marlene's body and her car were never found. However, her family took solace in the fact that justice had been served. Only her mutilated skull was buried. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed exploring these intriguing cold cases with me. If you found the video fascinating, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to Cold Case Mystique for more deep dives into cold case investigations. Your support helps me bring you more compelling content. Leave a comment below with your thoughts or any cases you'd like me to cover next. See you in the next video. And remember, the search for truth never stops.